think for many businesses or many business owners, as long as they pay themselves on a monthly basis, and even if their net profit is in the negative, they don't care as much. And I feel like what I have learned as well recently is that even though I pay myself, it's not okay that my net profit is in the negative, because I have to reinvest back to the business.
Everyone knows, like, you can't run a loss for very long and then, expect to stay in business still, unless
Right.
they're, not really real losses. It really just comes down to you're paying more than your business can afford. It's like most Americans have a problem of they're living above their means, and that's basically what your business means. It either means that you're spending too much money on stuff that you shouldn't be, or you can't afford and support, or you need to be making more money. And the easiest way to make more money is just raise your prices. And you can't always do that, but most business owners, they're so scared of raising their prices, but that's really what needs to happen. And it's acceptable. It's your prices went up, so your prices for your customers have to go up. That's just how economics works.
Welcome to another insightful episode of the Master Delegator podcast, your go-to resource for mastering the art of delegation. I'm your host, Christy Yoder, and today we have a fantastic episode lined up for you. Focusing on a topic crucial for every business, improving cash flow and the indispensable role of virtual assistants. But before we dive into the meat of today's discussion, let me introduce our incredible guest, Alex. Now, Alex is not your stereotypical finance and accounting nerd. With an entrepreneurial mindset, he has the rare ability to both envision the big picture and dive into the nitty-gritty details of a problem. His ability to pull you in with a smile and a joke pairs well with his talent at simplifying a problem to make you feel comfortable overcoming any obstacle. From a young age, Alex was instilled with the belief that business ownership and real estate were the keys to building wealth. Fueling his passion, he invested time and energy in gaining wisdom across a diverse range of business topics and ventures. This journey led him to establish Little CFO Services, a venture aimed at helping business owners truly understand their numbers, empowering them to make informed and strategic decisions. Today, Alex is here to share his insights on how to enhance your cash flow and leverage virtual assistants to streamline your operations. So grab your notepads and get ready to learn. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Christy. I'm happy to be here.
You know what? As I was reading your introduction, I was actually thinking of adding some more, because I have personally worked with you, and I can definitely tell, that working with you has been very, so easy. And whenever there's, difficulties in the business, you make it so light because of how you are as a person and your personality. In my introduction, I mentioned that how you joke around, and that's who you are, really. Your introduction is not just something that I said because you sent it to me, but because it's really who you are. I believe in it, so it's really you. So I know that I have introduced you already, but tell us a little bit about yourself that I have not mentioned in the introduction, like maybe on the personal side.
Yeah. So, to put it simply, like, my firm and myself, we just help people that make money but feel broke, which is a lot of business owners. We help them just better understand what they make, spend, and keep. And on a personal note, like you said, I'm not your stereotypical accountant and finance person. I'm very lighthearted, and I try not to bore people to sleep, with all the financial talk. There's a lot of people that's just not their forte, or, most people didn't get in business to do the accounting and back office, or look at the numbers. They got in business to, do whatever they're passionate about. So I'm just there to try and make that side of the business a little bit smoother and, help them understand it more.
Yeah. So what is something that you have seen common in many businesses when it comes to cash flow? I know you mentioned that, you help businesses who make money, but they feel broke, they have a lot of revenue, but they don't make profits. Is that one of the common things that you see from businesses?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is just not doing any type of cash flow forecasting. Most business owners, what they do is they look at how much is in the bank right now, and then they do like, back of the napkin math of like, okay, well, I have payroll for this amount in like 2 weeks, and then there's this one expense coming up in a week, and that's about as far ahead in the future that they cash flow. They don't really look, multiple weeks or months out. And another thing is that too many people, they focus on revenue and not cash. So like they'll have tons of revenue and be like, oh, I'm making so much money, but like then they look at the bank account and like, where is it? And it's because they actually never went and collected it. Like just because you send an invoice doesn't mean that you got paid, And I think if there's a huge disconnect on that. One of my brand new clients, he had like invoices from 2021 still outstanding that he just never collected on. He didn't know about it because he never looked. And I think it's a pretty common problem that most business owners have.
Yeah, I love that. And that's actually one of the things that you help us out, right? When we started working together, you help us see, you help us forecast our cash flow. Because I was one of those business owners as well, like, all right, we have $50,000 in our bank account, and
Yeah,
our payroll is this much. That means we can still survive for the next 2 weeks, but after that, I don't know
who
what to do.
knows?
Like, who
Yeah.
knows? Yeah. So I believe that it's really important to have your cash flow forecasting, and not many business owners know how to do that, right? And even just simply running the business, the operation side of it, not all businesses know, not all business owners know how to operate their business. How much more if we talk about the finances, except maybe for those businesses who studied, financing back in college. But one of the reasons why I chose the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is, enhancing a business's cash flow, is because last year I felt that it was tough, for other businesses, or for many businesses, including mine, to sustain their cash flow. So today I want to teach our listeners how they can improve their cash flow. And at the same time, I want to learn from you as well. So let's just, dive right in. So, how can a business improve its cash flow?
Yeah. And when you ask most business owners, like, what's your biggest problem? Most business owners will say, sales or marketing. But when you really talk to them for a few more minutes, what's keeping them up at night is their financials. And like, if they're going to be in business in a month from now, because they are going to run out of money or something like that. The biggest things that that successful business owners and businesses have that going into a recession or just even in general is just having a low accounts receivable. So like I said, not focusing just on revenue, but receiving that revenue, actually getting the cash, having some type of system set up to where when you send the invoice to a customer, there's automatic reminders of like, hey, when this is due, like, 3 or 7 days before the due date and then on the due date, and have some type of system set up to where you follow up to make sure that that gets collected on. One of my newest strategic partners is a payment processing service, and I love what they're doing, and they have it set up to where anything under a certain dollar threshold, you can auto debit the customer's account, um, which I haven't really found anywhere. It's most auto debiting type of thing is a recurring payment and it's a set amount every month. But what if it's variable? And in their case, it's like a pool maintenance. So where it's a set amount every month, but sometimes there's repairs or something. And in the contract, it has how much basically they can auto debit for. But that eliminates the need to even send an invoice. The customer doesn't have to actually even look at it and then get around to paying it at some point. So having some type of system to where you're sending the invoices, hopefully automatically, and then also collecting on them and, reminding and let the customer know if you're not, auto debiting that it's due and not just sending it and, oh yeah, the customer is definitely going to pay on the due date because that's wishful thinking. That's not really how the real world works. So
Right.
having a system for the receiving the money, having a low concentration risk for customers and vendors, which is super hard to do when you're starting out. You might have a handful of customers that are, most of your revenue, but if one of those customers goes away, that's can really hurt you. That can put you out of business. So having as much as you can, not a concentration of all your revenue or all your suppliers being one person, having a backup, vendor if you have a certain supplier or something like that, having someone else that you could go to in an emergency type of thing. Um, the third one that I have here is just being prepared with an emergency fund. Um, it's something everyone talks about, save up, have an emergency fund, but most people don't actually do that in practice. They have that mentality of like, oh, well, if I just put more money into operations and investing and doing my business better, then later on I'll have time to put money aside when everything's going great. But that's usually not how life goes. There's usually going to be a rough patch no matter what you're doing. So just having a little bit away every month, to make that emergency fund, which is usually 3 to 6 months of operating expenses, is what we like to see. 3 months is like realistic. 6 months would be, amazing, but usually not what people can build up to unless they're doing really well. And then simply having strong fundamentals with, have you really looked at what everything costs in your business? Is your pricing appropriate to where the cost that it takes you to actually, produce the product or, provide the service to the client? Is it a good, gross profit margin to where you're actually making good money? Because, one of my specialties is contractors in like the construction environment. And a lot of contractors don't think about all the extra expenses it takes to provide, product or service. So they'll give an estimate for a project, a construction project or whatnot, but they won't think about all the overhead and like indirect costs that it takes to do that project. And at the end of the day, like their estimate was like, oh, I was gonna have 30% profit on this project. It's gonna be great. And then if they happen to actually review the project after it's completed, it's like, oh, well, our profit margin was like 12%. What happened there? And it's because of all the other costs that like, oh yeah, we always have that cost. Like they just didn't think about it. Just, really honing in on provide like doing a good estimate, but in order to do a good estimate, just reviewing what does it actually take to provide the service. But those are kind of like my main 5 things I think that are like the great fundamentals of a successful business. And
Mhm.
there could be a billion different things.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Those are really good. I love that you mentioned about, having emergency funds. So, when should a business start saving up for emergency funds? Does it have to be, um, like, let's say after after 2 months of being in the business or after a year of being in the business? Like, how soon should a business start having an emergency funds?
I mean, realistically, it should be like immediately. I mean, most people would suggest that if you have like a full-time job and you're starting this business as a side business and you're wanting to make the switch from a full-time job into this business being your full-time gig, having like, a 6-month runway of expenses, most people can't really do that. It's really a gamble, with their business. Um, I think it's all about just starting because it's a habit thing. It's not really about how much you put into your fund. It's more about getting into the habit of doing it in the first place. Um, just putting away a small percentage of your revenue every month, and just having that mentality of that is something you can't touch because it's, locked away for either for taxes. Same thing with like the tax idea of putting putting in a different bucket for taxes versus putting it versus savings. Just starting somewhere and then having that as a goal of your for your year to have 3 months worth in that savings and working towards that is really just, it's more about the mindset versus X amount percentage every month type of thing.
Right. Yeah, it's the consistency. I love that. And so, let's say there's a business owner, and this business owner has a lot of, let's say, has a revenue of $100,000 every month,
Mhm.
but the net profit is negative 10%, almost consistent for the past 6 months.
Mhm.
Like, what would you advise a business owner to take a look at, and what type of changes should the business owner do?
Right now, like my guess would be pricing needs to change. A lot of people haven't changed their prices in years. Second thing would be to look at subscriptions and like where's your money actually going towards? Um, as part of that whole pricing thing, you take a look at the actual, cost of goods cost of goods sold or cost of services, what it actually costs to, provide the service or product. Seeing at like, okay, is there any way to, make this more efficient or cut down, the cost it takes to provide that service? A lot of times people have tons of subscriptions that they're paying for, they're not actually using anymore, or they don't really need. I mean, when you're having a loss, like it's basically just you're looking at what do I absolutely need at that point. And even if it's a nice to have, like you have to weigh that against, do I want to eat, or is this subscription, is this, tech service that's part of my tech stack, is that really needed for me to operate my business? And you'll find a lot of things that you can cut if you have to. Um,
Mhm.
but another thing, like one of the first things that I look at when I look at a business is usually credit card fees, because that's usually what people, they just accept that that's a cost of doing business. And once they found one provider, they never like review to see if that's the best provider in the future or if there's a better way to do it. Like that new payment processor that I mentioned, they actually emailed me. That was cold email. It was one of the, billion cold emails that I get, but actually it was a diamond in the rough and has been, game changing for a lot of my clients. But just looking at that, it can make a night and day type of thing. Like one of the first clients that I switched over to them, it's gonna save them 27 grand this next year just by switching over to payment processor. Nothing really changed on his side of the house. All he did was change payment processors and how the systems run, but everything's automated. It didn't change how he operates his business, but significantly, different to his bottom line.
Wow. Yeah. Um, Actually, credit card fees are one of the things that we tried to resolve too, right? And I know you have provided some solutions to us. And this is just the reality of owning a business, right? Like we have so many things that we have to take a look at, and we have to make sure that we're not just focused on the operation side of the business, like sales, marketing, hiring people, but also give focus on your finances. I think for many businesses or many business owners, as long as they pay themselves on a monthly basis, and even if their net profit is in the negative, they don't care as much. And I feel like what I have learned as well recently is that even though I pay myself, it's not okay that my net profit is in the negative, because I have to reinvest back to the business unless I'm willing to reinvest my payroll back, my
Yeah.
my own pay back to the business. So, what can you say about that?
Are you sick and tired of being overwhelmed and afraid you'll never scale your business? Meet Smart VAs. Unlike many virtual assistant agencies that only assign one dedicated virtual assistant, we provide flexibility for growing businesses by assigning a team of experienced virtual assistants that can do different tasks to support your continuous growth. Visit smartvas.online to book a free discovery call and start growing your business.
I mean, if your net profit is negative, eventually that's going to catch up to you. Because like if you're doing the accounting properly and like you're not, if you're paying yourself and it's a distribution, not actually like you're on payroll or anything, then like it doesn't go through the income statement, so you don't see it. So actually like your net profit's actually, less, even you have more of a loss than it might look like. But it's all about just cutting expenses and looking at, is my pricing, is that fair market value? And then kind of doing scenario planning, which is where I step in of like, if our price is X, like what does that mean? How much of our customers do we think we'll lose if we increase our prices for X amount? And can we survive, based on that? Or if we keep it at what the price is now, how long can we survive for? I mean, everyone knows like you can't run a loss for very long and then, expect to stay in business still, unless
Right.
they're, not really real losses, but that's a whole accounting thing. But it really just comes down to you're paying more than your business can afford. It's like most Americans have the problem of they're living above their means, and that's basically what your business means.
Mm-hmm.
It either means that you're spending too much money on stuff that you shouldn't be, or you can't afford to support, or you need to be making more money. And the easiest way to make more money is just raise your prices. And you can't always do that, but most business owners, they're so scared of raising their prices, but that's really what needs to happen. And it's acceptable, it's your prices went up, so your prices for your customers have to go up. That's just how economics works.
Exactly. And even with my business, I raised my pricing last year. And even with my current clients, I had to raise their, their payment a little bit, just to be able to raise my team members' pay as well, because of inflation, like we can't continue for paying a lot more for our cost of goods if we're not setting our pricing right, you
Mhm.
know. And so speaking of cost of goods, one of there are so many business owners coming to us, because they want to hire, they want to have a more cost effective solution for their business. Instead of hiring somebody for $50 an hour, they can hire somebody for a lot cheaper than that. So let's talk about outsourcing. What do you think is the benefits of that when it comes to improving a business's cash flow?
Yeah. And I know this sounds, biased and self-serving, but it like the virtual assistants is in like the same realm as like fractionals, just like myself, where like a fractional CFO is a chief financial officer that helps on the financial strategy of the business. But I work with people with businesses that are, in the 500,000 annual revenue to, 50 million annual revenue stage, to where they've grown enough to where they have those larger problems that they need that high level support on, but they're not making enough money to, support a full-time $300,000 chief financial officer. But a fractional CFO can come in and provide that experience and knowledge at a fraction of the time, but also a fraction of the cost. And it's the same thing for a fractional CMO, chief marketing officer or a chief operating officer, or a virtual assistant. You get them for a fraction of the time, but you still get the knowledge. Like it doesn't, just because they're not like a full member of your team, all there all the time. Like their knowledge stays the same. You still get 100% of their knowledge and their experience, and it's the same idea. Just utilizing where you have gaps and you can't fully support a full team member, because a lot of people, they can't just take a part-time job. They need a full-time job to support themselves. But when you have VAs or fractional people that are working on multiple businesses at the same time, you get to use their wealth of experience and knowledge not only from just, their past prior experience, but also what they're seeing with other clients and what is working for other clients or what isn't working for other clients. They can share that with you. And it's super helpful. It's because I think a lot of business owners, they neglect the whole like opportunity cost of things of like, oh, well, if I do it myself, then I can save, $2,000 this month. It's like, okay, well, like one of my newest clients, he was talking about how, he's doing all the back office stuff, and my firm was basically coming in to take over all the accounting and finance support, and he could save, a few $1,000s to do it all himself, or he could hand it off to us, and with that time could go get another $1 million in revenue over the next 4 months. And it's like, well, if you put it that way, it's like a no-brainer, And it's the same thing with, virtual assistants. You could be doing all the marketing and all the admin work and all this stuff yourself, but think of if you actually use your time properly, how much more revenue and how much more could you build your business if you had that time to work on building your business and not doing all the admin work. Yeah, it's going to
Right.
cost you some more money coming out of your bank account, but if you're actually utilizing your time properly, think of how much more money you could be bringing in. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really an investment, as long as you use your free time wisely. So, when it comes to like business owners who don't have any idea how to handle their finances, do you think they should learn how to handle their finances? Do you think they should learn how to cash flow forecast or project their cash flow, or do you feel like they should just hire somebody else, to take care of it for them?
It's a mix of both. Because even like with my fractional CFO work, the goal isn't just to always be there to answer a question for someone. It's not to give them the answers, it's to help train them to think the same way that I do so they can answer a lot of the questions themselves. Not just replace me, but so I can be there to help guide them in having a new perspective and to provide those, second opinions on things. For instance, I think cash flow forecasting, once someone is taught how it's done, it's a super simple
Right.
exercise, but like just understand having a tool to be able to do it, like a template, and then having the expertise coming in and being taught like, oh, this is where you do this is where you do this, like having that knowledge. That's all they really need when they're just starting out in those early days. You need to have a grasp of the financials, and basically what I teach a lot of clients or all my clients is basically how every business decision that they make affects like the critical four: uh, revenue, gross profit, net profit, and cash. Right? Those are the four most important numbers like in your business, and every business decision you make affects one of those four numbers. And that's just how like the mentality. So like you don't need to outsource everything, especially at the beginning. And you need to have a understanding of how all your decisions affect all those things. You can't just, be like, oh, well, I hired a fractional CFO and outsourced accounting firm. I don't have to learn any of that stuff. You still have to know how it works so you can judge like if they're doing a good job or not. You still have to understand like how what you're doing affects your business. But it's time. So it's like a middle ground basically.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And when is the best time to hire a CFO?
So usually around like the 500,000 to $1 million annual revenue mark is where it makes sense. I mean, obviously it'd be great to do it beforehand, but it just doesn't make sense usually until around then. And like outsourced accounting, you want like a bookkeeper as soon as possible. It usually, it makes most sense when you're around 125, maybe 150K annual revenue. That's when your business can support outsourcing those type of things. And each industry is a little bit different. Like some industries, they can wait longer before they really start to need a fractional CFO just because their industry has higher revenue numbers, but the same like business problems as a lower revenue industry does. For instance, like in the construction world, their revenue numbers are way higher because it's like a $1 million house or whatever.
Right.
But the profit at the end of the day may be the same as like a $500,000 business. It's just the numbers are a little bit different, one word zero basically, but like similar problems. So it's really depends on the industry, but 500,000 to a million in annual revenue for a fractional CFO type of world, and 125 to 150K annual revenue for accounting, outsourced accounting stuff.
Yeah, and probably even before your business is hurting for money, right? Because it's kind of hard. It's kind of
Well,
hard.
it's really about preempting the problems. Like, do you want to grow, or a fractional CFO or outsourced accounting firm isn't supposed to be like a band-aid. It's supposed to like prevent the hurt in the first place. I mean, we can help you obviously like when it starts hurting, but like we want to make sure you don't hurt in the first place. It's preventive care instead of reactive care.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And what advice can you give to those businesses who are hurting financially right now, those who want to improve their cash flow this year?
I'll try and boil it down to a couple different points. One, review your outstanding accounts receivable. Like, who owes you money, and go talk to them. Don't be a douche about it, but like just ask them like, hey, like this was due back then. When should we expect payment? Just be professional and nice about it. Review all your expenses, like do an in-depth of every single expense that's come out of your bank account last month. See which ones are necessary, which ones aren't. Look into like a line of credit or business credit cards, having those like fallbacks. An emergency fund is great, but like a secondary type of emergency fund is like a credit card, a line of credit when like things get rough. And then look at raising your prices, seeing what expenses you can cut other than just the subscriptions you don't use anymore, and just really doing a review of like, is there a better way for me to do my business? Or is there things that I could pay for, like a virtual assistant, that could free up a little bit of time for me to go do things that are more profitable for my business? Because it sucks. It seems counterintuitive to spend money when you're hurting already, but if you utilize it wisely and that you can gain more revenue off of having that free time, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's sort of like a calculated risk.
Yeah.
Like you risk hiring somebody in hopes to get more revenues because it will give you more time.
Yeah,
to
just
do
like
more.
hiring a marketing firm, just like yesterday or the day before, I just hired a new marketing firm, and I don't know exactly when I might get back from that, but you're paying out money up front in the hopes that the experience and the knowledge and what they're doing is going to gain you more revenue. It's an investment, just literally the definition of investment, and that's what investing in any outside work is. You have to think of virtual assistants or fractional CFOs or just every contractor in the same realm of like a marketing type of deal of like,
Right.
it costs X amount, but what does it free me up to do, and what is it going to give me?
Yeah, that's so true. And as we wrap up, my last question for you is, if I'm a business owner that's ready to hire a CFO, what should I prepare?
Well, the number one thing usually is you have to have your financials in order. It's hard for me to do any type of advice if you and I both don't have any idea where you're at financially. If you're like, yeah, well, I think I made money last month, I can't really do a lot of advice on that. Luckily, like I have two sides of my business. I have the fractional CFO side, and then I have the accounting and tax side. So I can basically refer those people over to that side of my business to help them get their financials cleaned up, especially now. Right now is tax time. This is when people are like, okay, I need to file my taxes. Oh, wait, I haven't done my bookkeeping at all for last year. And this is when everyone, last minute tries
That's
to
a
clean up
pain
their
in the butt.
bookkeeping and then tries to get ready for tax time. So it's really just, getting their books ready and just having a conversation. You never know what they could do for you. And there's a lot of things that you can learn on the call. Like I
Exactly.
provide 1 hour free like strategy sessions for people, just to, we don't have to go super in depth. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your financials or anything, we can just hop on a call. You can tell me about the things that are going on in your business, and I can just give you ideas and, what you could look into or solutions that could help you.
Yeah, awesome. And where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I am www.littlecfoservices.com.
That's awesome. Well, it's a pleasure having you on the show, Alex. I learned a lot. I mean, I know most of the things that you discussed here. You mentioned this to me during our during my consultation with you, and when we were working together. But it's just a good refresher, to kind of hear all of these things again. And I think my key takeaway from this episode is to start saving up for an emergency fund, because we're not doing that right now. We just let our money sit in just one bank account, but we project and we forecast. But yeah, thank you so much for everything that you've shared.
Of course, yeah, I'm always here to help.